Video games box art. We love it. We despise it. What's not to love? You see, before the age of the internet and game reviews, this was one of the only ways you'd be able to judge a game before you bought it. Logically, you'd think that this would encourage game companies to work extra hard and design some fantastic covers to catch your eye. However, for every piece of well-crafted art, there were at least 10 sleep paralysis demons out there. I mean, look at this. That are just very poorly designed ones with little to no soul and had zero indication about what the game was about. So that's what we're here for. As you already know, I am a huge Persona fan. I've spoken so much on these games, it's not even funny. Combine that with my personal knowledge of design, and this left me with the perfect idea for a new production. As a grand finale to what will be known as one of our most successful years in the company, why not go back through memory lane and look over the different box arts featured in all of the mainline Persona games? We're covering all the key factors to a good box art, from the design to how well they match the themes of the games, you name it. Let's end off 2024 with a bang, so be sure to grab your favorite steelbook for this one, cause this is our look back at Persona box art. As always, before we start, just want to say that if you're enjoying our productions or you want to see more Persona-related stuff from us, be sure to press that subscribe button. And while you're at it, be sure to check out our Patreon to help further grow the channel. With that said, let's begin. The Japanese one, that is. Oh, don't worry, we'll get to Revelations, just you wait. Whatever the case is, I love the Japanese box art. The vibrant purple and blues, combined with the front portrait of the protagonist here, it's awesome. Then you have this bright yellow with the logo, which really grabs your attention. I like that it also has this little tagline here, "Be your true mind." It gives a good impression and tells the consumer that, hey, this game has some psychological themes. Might want to check it out. Imagine going to the store and just seeing this particular cover among several other ones. It'll probably catch your eye pretty quickly. Only thing I'd personally change is maybe use something else other than this art of the protagonist. It's really cool imagery, and I personally love this kind of stuff, but this almost gives it the illusion that we're going to fight ourselves in the story. Not really a complaint, more so just something I thought I'd point out. What doesn't leave a good impression is the North American box art. What is this? I'm sorry, but this is awful. Let's start with some context. As many of you know, Persona 1 went through by far the most changes when being localized for a new market. This includes things like character names, appearances, etc. And that seems to have also been the case with the box art. This is by far the only entry to have this drastic of a box art change to a different region. Regardless, let's first go over what's going on here and then I'll share my thoughts. So it's a little hard to see, but you have Vishnu, the highest level persona in the game. It makes sense placing him at the front of your box art. In front you can see the game's logo with the Revelations series to go alongside it. And behind him is this green-like background. I suppose this is meant to represent the sequences when you travel to see Philemon? Whatever the case is, I just don't like this box art. It's really hard to see Vishnu with how overly detailed he is and the whole lighting composition. That and this very bizarre choice for a background. It's almost impossible to tell what you're even looking at. The logo's fine, it's not the best, and I prefer the PSP's version, but it works for what it is. However, I don't like how insanely busy the whole thing looks with this Revelations series branding. You have 3 different fonts, 4 if you want to count the PlayStation logo, and it's all clashing with each other. Just an absolute mess all around. Atlus knew this was a huge mistake, so skipping a few years later, we got the PSP release of Persona 1. And what do you know, it looks great! As you can see, we've gone back to the Japanese box art style with tons of additions to its branding. I love the silhouettes of these butterflies and branches alongside the new logo. It's a lot easier on the eye and better communicates the themes of the game. I also just really like how we have all of the party members on here, all posed according to their personalities. It's a great way to display how this is the definitive way to experience Persona 1. Oh, and hey look, we can see Vishnu in the background. He also seems to have been edited with some gold plating on him. Overall, while I still prefer the Japanese PS1 box art because of its cooler imagery, this is a much cleaner and more definitive version of it. Huh. Apparently Innocent Sin on PS1 was never released to the West. That only gives us the Japanese one to check out, so let's do it. It's surprisingly straightforward, mostly taking cues from the Persona 1 box art with the same kind of logo and even imagery with the protagonist. It almost makes me wonder how different the series could have looked if Meguro still directed the series. In the end, while I do enjoy the consistency in keeping a familiar style with the box art as seen with Innocent Sin and Eternal Punishment, they don't really stand out on their own. Good thing we have the North American version version to fix that. And to my surprise, it's actually pretty good. If anything, I slightly prefer this one over the Japanese one. It's nothing too crazy. We just have a protagonist, Maya, alongside her starting persona, Maya. Characters having their starter personas is going to be the biggest trend moving forward, and I'm all for it. It only makes each of the protagonists stand out from one another in my opinion. I personally love the imagery of her persona comforting her like this. It gives the idea that personas are more than what's already been established, which is partially true since Personas and 2's duology seem to have a lot more utility throughout the story than other entries. Oh, but we're not done just yet. Just like P1, this duology also has their own PSP release. Like Persona 1's case, both try to establish a new form of giving the game its own identity, which is really cool. Innocent Sin actually takes a few notes from Eternal Punishment's Japanese PS1 box art. It uses a bright red background, and as you can see, we both have Tetsuya and Maya alongside their ultimate personas. I'd definitely say that this is the much better box art compared to the PS1's. It just gives a clearer showcase for what we could expect from Innocent Sin and the themes covered on it. Having Maya here is also a good way to represent her plot relevance. Which reminds me, let's head over to Eternal Punishment's box art and... wow, this looks great. As you can see, they essentially took what worked in the PS1 version of the game and heavily expanded upon it. Literally. We have the same pose of Maya in her starting persona, but this time it's fully colored and we can see the entire position they're in. I love the color theory used here. Maya's clothes and her persona contrast, yet still mix well with the sky-like background. One thing I love about the box arts in the PSP ports is that they practically look like the greatest aspects of their respective games, and refine them to what we expect from, say, Persona 4 and 5's branding and style. This is really helpful in not only making these games stand out from one another, but also marketing them to newer audiences. So, how well do these upcoming titles handle this? Only one way to find out. Hopefully with the series now having a much wider appeal, things won't be as messy as they were, right? Right? Yeah, so I lied. You see, Persona 3 might actually have the most box art of any game in this list. This game had a total of 3 different covers, US, UK, and Japan. Count that alongside its re-releases, FES, and Portable, and you have yourself a total of 8 box arts to go over. Regardless, this will be much easier because the focus is more on the execution of the same idea rather than major changes like we've seen in past entries. Let's start with the US box art. It's very straightforward. We have silhouettes of Makoto Yuki, Yukari, and Junpei. Behind them you can faintly see Orpheus and Thanatos. Both of these have the biggest plot relevance to the game, so it makes perfect sense to have those two on there. Beside all that, you can see the Megami Tensei logo. Persona was heavily promoted as a spin-off around this time, so it makes sense that you'd want to include its logo on there. Overall, pretty decent cover art. I don't think it's anything crazy, but it does the job for what you need to know about the game. The European box art, however... what even is this? Is it as bad as Revelations? Not by a mile, but it just looks so goofy. Obviously, this cover's highlighting the Dark Hour with Tartarus shown off in the background. And I will say I do like how they show off the Death Arcana. It's a good way to symbolize the general topics covered in this title. But then you have these renders of Makoto, Mitsuru, and Akihiko, which all look fine, but what is Junpei doing over there? These renders in general are just not good when placed on something as detailed as this. Definitely the weakest of Persona 3's covers. Then we have Japan, which... my god, this is incredible. I'd go as far to say this is one of the best box arts in the whole series. You have Makoto Yuki as he just summons Thanatos. All in these gorgeous blues lighting up the scene. The posing, the composition, the style, it all screams confidence. It may not tell you much about the game itself, but this is pretty much all you need to catch your eye. There's a reason this was later reused for Reload's box art. Overall, fantastic work here. And with that, we can move on to FES. Rather than focusing exclusively on the themes and messages of said game, we're going to be tackling how well the game is able to represent itself in a broader and general scope, all while seeing how it all chooses to promote the extra content featured in said game. The US box art does this very well, actually. It sticks to the same style from its vanilla release, but this time we have a silhouette of Aigis, a clever way to promote the addition of The Answer. Like its original counterpart, there's not much I can really say other than this is another solid box art. It's straight to the point and focuses on what's new. Europe has easily improved after whatever this was. We have our main cast face to face with their respective personas. It doesn't really tell the consumer what exactly differs this from the original release. If anything, it wouldn't be too far off to assume this was some kind of fighting game with how everyone's posing. I mean, look at this. Why is Akihiko putting up his fists like he's about to beat up his own persona? However, I'd be lying if I said this doesn't look absolutely badass. I love artwork in this caliber, so this is probably my favorite when it comes to FES. And last but not least, we have Japan. Instead of focusing on the answer or just making a really cool looking scene, they focused on what the FES is meant to represent. Festival. One thing I noticed about the Persona 3 covers is that they always dive deep into looking dark and cool. This one, however, it feels more welcoming. Quite nice even. It's an interesting taste, especially when trying to market this game for a bigger audience. With that said, that's all of Persona 3's box art. Thankfully, there's no other re-release, am I right? Oh, who am I kidding? Let's get to portable. There's only 2 here, so we won't be here for too long. To start, we have the American and Japanese one, which... wow, this looks amazing. I love how the entire thing is fully hand-drawn. You have Makoto Yuki as usual, but this time she's accompanied by Kotone, the female protagonist you can select in this port. Very smart and easy way to show off what's new in this re-release. Thanatos is back there in the background, looking badass as always. This is an easy second place for the best within Persona 3's artwork. But as for Europe, yeah, I don't know about this one. It's not bad, per se. I just don't think this properly tells the consumer what's new in this re-release. Personally, I just stick with what's already been made in other regions. Whatever the case is, that's all of the Persona 3 box arts. Thankfully, there's not another game I'm missing or has recently released for me to analyze. Persona 3 Reload is literally just a remake of Vanilla's Japanese artwork. I like it. Not much I can say that I haven't already said, other than I appreciate this choice for its remake. Anyway, let's move on to Persona 4. It is now 2008. It's at this point where all regions utilize the same piece of artwork. This leaves us with only the original alongside its re-release artwork. With that said, how does Persona 4 handle this? Really well, actually. This might be one of my favorite box arts of the whole series. Persona 4 tries to do something a little different, and that's practically showing us the entire cast right off the bat. You could say this is basically spoiling the main story, but I don't really have an issue with this. It's a whole new identity and uses its cast and color as a way to brand itself. Yosuke, Kanji, Naoto, they're all posed perfectly to show off each of their personalities. I love how Teddy's in that little TV, meant to represent the TV world and its thematic existence. And then you have the protagonist in the middle with Izanagi in this bright yellow to show off the main color of the game. The entire box art just defines confidence with itself. It has everything you need to know and is able to catch your attention perfectly. Easily one of the best we've seen up to this point. I wonder how Golden improves on all this. You know, I just realized there was an entire car in this artwork. What's going on here? It's good, I like it, but it's way, and I mean way, too busy. You have the main cast as usual, but then you have Izanagi looking like an absolute giant compared to everyone else. Oh, but we still have to have Marie, our new addition to the cast. So how do we do that? Have her sitting on the Velvet Room limo. That'll help. Seriously, I had no idea this was even on there until making this production. Oh, and that's not all. There's steel bars you can see in back of the TV world. But just take a look further down and then you'll see Inaba with this strange comic book filter with this bright yellow on top of it. Oh, but wait! There's also the logo, and we have to make it stand out so we can add the same glowing effect for when you summon a persona. It's genius! Just, no. This is beautiful artwork, I won't deny that. I'd be more than happy to use this as a wallpaper. But as a box art, my recommendation is simply brand this game like how Persona 4 Golden does this in-game. I mean, just look at its opening. It's just as busy with all these animations and colors, but it uses that to its advantage and creates one of the coolest art styles the series has ever made. Doesn't matter me saying this, since Persona 4 is already a very beloved game, and the box art of Golden is not going to affect it as much as you'd think, but it is a massively missed opportunity in my opinion. Let's just move on before I get a headache from all this. We finally made it. Persona 5. How'd it do? Only one way to find out. Let's start with the original release. And, oh my god, this might actually be the best box art in the entire series. As you can see, Persona 5 actually takes a lot of inspiration from what worked in Persona 4's. We have the main cast with the protagonist in the middle looking at the player. Above them is their starter persona, in this case being Arsene. It's hard to describe, but there's something about this that makes it look, well, awesome! I loved Persona 4's box art, but I definitely appreciate keeping everyone together as a group like they do here. I love how everyone's positioned according to how late in the game you get them, let alone how they show off their personalities. I mean, just look at Akechi here. He's truly up to no good here. And don't get me started on Arsene. His design as a persona is already fantastic, but then you have this angle staring down at you and just looks amazing. I also love the city background behind him. It makes everything feel so grand and impactful. Whenever I think of Persona, my mind will always think of this box art first. As for Royal, it's just as amazing. Is it as iconic and cool looking as the originals? No, but does it tell you that this is the definitive Persona 5 experience? Absolutely. I always loved Royal's way of branding itself. It's not as in-your-face or big of an upgrade as Golden was for P4, but it just adds enough to make it feel like a luxurious and grand experience. Basically telling you, this is how Persona 5 was meant to be played. And there's no better way of showing that off than here. We have all of our party members, now in their Phantom Thief outfits, and really just looking much more confident than their last outing. I adore this shot with Joker, Akechi, and Sumi here. It only helps highlight what'll come in the third semester and Sumi's involvement as a character. Not much else I can say. This is overall just a much better version of what Golden was trying to do. And I really hope that if they choose to continue to make re-releases, they take a similar approach like they did here. And that's about it. Those are all of the box arts featured in the Persona series. I might do one covering the spin-offs, who knows. In the end, I really hope you all enjoyed today's production. This was an absolutely fantastic year for us, and a wonderful experience getting to be a part of the community like this one. While we may have had some ups and downs, what matters is we're going to keep moving forward no matter what. Now, if you excuse me, until Atlus announces Persona 6, we have to keep pushing for more Persona 5 spin-offs. Persona 5 erasing anyone?